had singers, musicians, poets, spoken word artists, MCs, visual artists, filmmakers, photographers, orchestras, theater workers, many of whom call themselves artists, activists, and some call themselves artivists. But tonight we have a first here at This Light Sounds for Social Change. We have biketivists. Welcome to This Light Sounds for Social Change. Laila, Slammer, and Fallon, the creators of D.Railerz. Welcome to the show. And it's your turn to talk. You're not going to freeze up. Okay. Could each of you tell us what D.Railerz is?
Oh, that's an exciting question. We were just, Fallon and I were just talking outside about how the D.Railerz is a collective, and we're like, there's no set idea yet, which is, I think, actually a nice thing, because we're trying to at least engage in dialogue, and we're in the process of it now, and going forward. So for me, it's a process around engaging around, I think, race issues amongst women of color, in a activist setting, and also just getting on bikes, declaring your presence in space through movement. I think is a pretty powerful thing. And yeah, for me, it's a space for women of color to talk about a lot of our issues, also to create bonds and relationships, and also to talk about some of, I think, really pressing issues like, anti-Black sentiment amongst women of color, and issues around gender and sexuality as well. So yeah, for me,
that's a lot to do while you're riding a bike.
Yeah, while you're riding a bike. That's, in case I share that with anybody. Surprise! That was my idea of D.Railerz. but it's not said, so it's beautiful.
That's right. Go ahead, Fallon.
Yeah, I mean, like Laila said, I think it's basically just that existence can be resistant. So even if we don't necessarily have a theme, like a lot of bike rides in DC have a theme and stuff. But right now, I feel like having a place that's all women of color, and whatever that means, be queer, or we've had trans allies and stuff like that coming through, and that's still just declaring our presence and that we have a right to exist in the city, particularly in a time where, in DC, there's a lot of stuff going on with people being pushed out, and that looks a lot of different ways for a lot of different people. And so just declaring that we are here and that we do have power amongst ourselves. And I think a lot of times when we do work like this, it always depends on look, there's male feminists too, but it's it's actually bigger than that, right? Us representing ourselves, and like Laila said, talking about a lot of different issues, because people think when there's just women of color all together that we're just going to get along, and we can say even within our group, the three of us, we're part of this creation, and there's we represent more than just women of color, but just working through our issues with the different demographics that's in our group, and also that's represented in DC.
Fascinating. Slammer.
I don't think I have really much to add. I mean, I know I jumped onto D.Railerz after it was founded by you all. So
actually,
right.
I'm part of the founding group.
Really?
Oh, surprise.
Okay, that's pretty exciting.
Otherwise, you can leave the studio.
Well, one of the reasons why I wanted to get involved with this group is kind of how bike culture has been used as a tool for this gentrification process. So it's kind of a lot of, I think it's not unique to DC. I think it's in a lot of cities that are going through this economic, some would say progression, some others, like myself, would say it's not that progressive. And so it's, the bike policy, these kind of there's all these bike rides that you may have heard of or seen in DC, where you have 50 or 100, 200, 300, 400, 600 riders. And it's kind of those rides and this recent kind of bike policy support to increase biking, to increase access to that kind of transportation is marketed towards an urban elite that's coming into the city, and not a.
Yeah, I'm sorry. In fact, it's caused a lot of bad feelings between people who don't bike or driving, or even walking, and these lanes being occupied by bikers. Well, we can touch on that later. I'm sorry, Slammer, I interrupted your thought.
No, that's about it. That's all I have.
See how I was calling you Slammer? I was making it, dropping it every
Permanently.
Exactly. Now, you kind of told us what the philosophy and how the group looks. How did it come to be?
How did it come to be?
What were the seeds that were
yeah.
planted?
Yeah, and I think what's nice is that there are many different seeds from all of us. For me, it was I've always really loved bikes. Actually, I went to Oberlin, and there's a bike co-op there, but I was really turned off by it because it was completely dominated by white folks and predominantly white men. And it sucked because it was one of those spaces where I was like, I'm not even gonna get involved because I know it's gonna be problematic. And so I didn't, and I always regretted that. And so when I got back to DC, after I graduated, I started biking and just doing my own thing, and started meeting a bunch of like actually black bikers, and I was really excited. But a lot of the rides were male dominated, and it was this kind of ego thing. And then also, very much on what Fallon and Slammer have been saying to add to that, just the issues amongst ourselves as women of color, and then the gentrification issue in DC, and the link to these critical mass. It's a critical mass of influx of people into the city, and I do think it's reflected in things like, critical mass DC. Not to knock on them, but you can see who's attending, who's there in the space, what it means for these folks to ride through the city. Who's looking, who's participating, who's not participating. So all of those issues come to one thing, and then so it started off with me, in my mind being like, I really want there to be a space for women of color, where we can bike, where it's local, and trying to get into all those issues. And then, I think a lot of people were in conversation. I talked to Fallon about that, and a couple other friends, and I think word spread around, and it sounds like a lot of other people were thinking the same thing, so we found each other through this, I don't know,
Interwebs
of connectivity, and
Why were you drawn to the group of Fallon, or being part of the creation of the group?
I mean, for me, I was just thinking about it. I was like, I kind of like recklessness. Like, that's kind of why I like to bike, because it's like you said before, it has created a lot of tension between people who bike and people who drive. One of the reasons why I think that is just like we could have said, like, the demographics of people who are biking and what it represents, right? Like, you have all these bike co-ops and these like red bikes who shall remain brandless, that are put in very specific neighborhoods to fuel a certain kind of people. So for me, like, as a black woman biking, like, I know there's been times when I've biked and I've been in my lane and people have swung over and like trying to hit me just to be like spiteful. And for me, it's like, as someone who like has that nature, it is a form of resistance for me. Like, no, like, we can coexist, and I do belong here, and I do have a right to occupy space. And it seems offensive to some people because, like, I'm black and a woman. Whenever it's really, and when people talk about biking, I feel like I'm not going to speak for all women, but for a lot of women that I know in my life are intimidated just by the way that they're treated. And so for people to say, like, no, like, I am capable of protecting myself. I don't need other people to block traffic for me, and I, like, have a right to, take up even space. Not even take up space, but to be present and to be visible. For me, it's important because I feel like a lot of times women, or whatever that looks like, whatever that means, are told, like, be quiet, be submissive, keep your head down. And that's just not, in my opinion, what I want my women to look like. And so when I saw people like, we're trying to take up the street and have like speakers and like a party, and I was like, let's do that. Like, let's cause some ruckus, because some of these neighborhoods have got a little too quiet and squeaky clean for me, and to disrupt that is something in itself.
All right, Slammer.
I already said why I got involved with the group. I do want to say that I've been biking ever since I moved to DC, which was 10 years ago, out of partly it was necessity, and partly it was also the people that I ended up spending. Well, some people that I ended up spending time with, that's the only way they could go around, or wanted to get to one place or the other. So either I would roll with them on a bike, or they would leave me. and I would have to meet them someplace. Or they were very nice, but they did not want to walk with me as they were with their bike. So I just ended up biking. I also lived in Anacostia, so oftentimes if I wanted to get home, I needed to bike from Northwest to Anacostia because the trains, closed by like 11:30, 12. So it was really out of necessity and not necessarily it was a leisure thing. So, now it's like 10 years later, and for me, it's kind of changed a little bit. It is definitely a necessity. I use it as my main form of transportation, but also I do like the idea of it being something that's leisurely, and one of the ways for it to be leisurely for me is to be able to bike with a huge group of people, because it's easier to bike with a huge group of people down a busy street like 16th Street versus doing it alone, where I do feel scared. Like I'd rather bike another street that has less people. So that's also part of it. It's definitely like a reckless, kind of like selfish thing for me, because it does often feel dangerous depending on what street you are to be alone as a biker versus being with even 10 other bikers.
I'm curious what changes a bike from a tool for transportation, like you're saying, a necessity, to a symbol of gentrification or a symbol of empowerment. What causes that process?
That's a good question.
I think one is, like Sam already said, there's a lot of situations before even recently where biking is more affordable. Like even now, like you take the train, you go one place to another, you can easily spend like $10 there and back. So the train is like, people say, oh, DC has such a great public transportation system, but like she just explained, if you're trying to go a distance that's far, across the road or something like that, you can easily spend a lot of money. So like a lot of my friends that I grew up with, like where I grew up and then moving to DC, like biking was just a way to save money, like to get around. And that's, I moved here with not a lot of money, so I was like, okay, this is like easy, I like to do it, and I like to be fit. But I think there's also like a specific bike culture here that is very class and race exclusive. So you walk in some of these different bike stores up and down main streets, and you can easily see a bike that's $600, and it's like trendy and it's cool. And so it becomes more of a symbol of like the quote unquote urban, not urban as in the way that it's used to, refer to black people, but urban as in like the city of like, I am a single person, I can bike around, it's easy for me, like I don't have a family, so I don't really need a car. That kind of young professional look is being associated with bike culture. And in doing that, paving roads, or like you have roads that have been there for like 10 years with cracks that have never been fixed, until now people want to bike on it, and now that a certain kind of people, mostly white folks with money, want to bike on it, now it becomes a city priority to use funds that could be used for other stuff to make bike lanes. And I think that's where some of the controversy that you talked about is coming from. Not that bikes are bad, not that they're, like the culture's evil, but what it's often used to fuel can displace a lot of people.
And I think you have summed up some of the feelings I've had. And, I used to ride bikes, and you're really encouraging me to do it again and maybe join you one or more times.
We're going to hold you to that because it's on the air now.
That's right. And it's being videotaped. But I do have that feeling. It's like one more reminder that this city is under siege, for lack of a better term. Now, Fallon, you ride are you employed? Do you work?
As of tomorrow, no.
Okay. Now,
Yes.
For all of you, if you bike to work, how accepted are you when you ride your bike to work? I mean, if I were to ride my bike to work, or a bike, I don't have a bike yet, and I work with black women, they would kind of frown upon that. How do you get black women in particular into the culture of, this is a way of transportation, this is good for your health, you understand?
Yeah.
I think there's some preconceived notions. That's just
Yeah, you already answered it though. Like, there's people are taught to think that it's not for them.
Mhm.
It's like the healthy eating thing. People are like, oh no, that's the vegan, that's made up, but it's really not. It's
Right.
you can brainwash people to think that certain things are not acceptable. But I've had jobs where I've got laughed at to bike to work, and then I've also had jobs where everyone bikes to work. But you just roll in with pride, and then you don't have to worry about that.
It's interesting because, yeah, there's like the bike out of necessity and then biking out of privilege.
Yeah.
And, it's really nuanced. And I think, where I work, everyone bikes to work, and a lot of it is out of privilege.
Mhm.
And I think similarly, going back to your question earlier around some of the issues with biking, I think also, just to jump on what Fallon and Simon are saying, with biking, there's also been this alternative culture, right?
Mhm.
The alternative bike culture, and I do think it's just been used as another tool to kind of employ patriarchy and racism, and I see it so much in this alternative bike culture where it's, messenger and all of this stuff, and just like another space that's not supportive and somewhat threatening. And I think it's interesting also at the same time where you see people frowning on folks, riding bikes out of necessity. I definitely saw that in the suburbs. I grew up in Wheaton, Maryland, and that's definitely something you could see, tensions around class and race. And then here, there's a necessity in the city and in this culture, and then there's also this, some places it's not okay depending on like the color of your skin. Straight up, if you're a white person biking to work, you're going to be received well. If you're not, something's going to be weird, So I think that's a big issue. And it's one of those things that people don't think about, but it's like Fallon said, this condition. It doesn't really answer your question about you and your other colleagues at work, but on the broader thing of kind of the race dynamic around biking.
Right. Now, I've heard of. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to. We touched on some of the stigmas, but specifically as a woman, there is the stigma of being on a bike, like physically just riding on a bike, because of just like people's, like I think people sexualize women on bikes. Women are sexualized all the time, but I think there's a way that men will talk to me when I'm on a bike that the things that they say to me are just things that they would never say to
Someone walking.
It's just like, can I ride with you? Can I, I had some, and I think there's like a class stigma too. It's as if like I know I said it was out of necessity, but also I choose to bike as well. So, I had someone say, why isn't your boyfriend taking you, driving you? I could be your boyfriend. I could drive you around. Why are you on that bike? He said some other whack stuff, but it's just like there is this
cheesy pickup lines.
But as
times are hard out there.
I guess so. But as
well, I gotta start riding on it. I'm sorry, I'm a feminist and all, but it's been a minute. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, I've lived, like I said, I lived here for 10 years, and so as long as I've lived here, I've seen people biking, but it's always, now that biking for a certain group of people is upward mobility, biking for another group of people is not.
Twinkle fingers. That's very well, exactly.
So that's kind of like that's why I'm part of D.Railerz, is like these conversations to talk about like class and being a woman rider and what that means in terms of, because there's so much stuff for me with this, like safety as well, because I also biked out of safety necessity too, because I can bike at 3 a.m. versus walking at 3 a.m. If I walk at 3 a.m, some guy will stop and like ask me for sex. And I'm like, I'm not a sex worker, so and there's nothing that's telling you that I am a sex worker, but you're gonna like follow me for blocks and blocks. And
because it's 3 o'clock in the morning.
And because I'm a woman, I'm not allowed to be outside at 3 a.m. So when I'm on my bike, I feel free. Like I feel literally like I have no shackles. I'm like on my way. I can go anywhere I want in the city. So that's what I tell other women who ask me about biking. I'm like, try it. There's a sense of freedom that you may get that you may have never felt before biking.
I'm going to have a short question, and then we're going to take a musical break. What does the name mean?
There was like 100 different possible names.
Well, give us about 50, maybe.
Let's just stick with what we have right now.
The creative process was very robust, to say the least.
The way I interpret it though was like derailing or like debunking like patriarchy, heteronormativity, and like racism and all those things that, like we've been saying, come with bike culture. Like we noticed that it's in this city, like it's very white, male dominated, white, upper middle class, that's wealthy dominated. But what does that mean to actually not just say that you don't agree with those things, but actually derail them, like take them off? And then it was supposed to be a pun, play on words, rail, bike, yeah.
So we're going to go to a musical break. We're talking this evening with our guest, the D.Railerz. We have Laila Fallon, whose birthday it is today. Thank you for spending your birthday with us, what's left of it.
Thank you.
I understand you had a party last night. And in case no one could tell, you're beautiful and all, but hey, that's what you're supposed to do on your birthday. We have Fallon. Welcome again, and thank you for coming. And we have Slammer. She is a family member here at Radio CPR. And it's, I don't know, I wasn't surprised to see you for some reason. So we're glad you're here tonight. What are we going to go to, Ben?
Soul Searchers.
All right, get yourself a whistle and blow.
Thank you.
That's back in the day.
That's so funny because that song was definitely on my playlist.
Was it?
Yeah.
You want to share your playlist?
Oh yeah, I was gonna put it up on Group Shark. Do y'all want to add?
So I can just get it on the internet.
Yeah, I have this. We can send it to it, and then we all have songs to contribute.
Okay.
So I don't know how you want to do it. We have CDs, we have playlists.
Playlist.
Yeah. Okay, so you can tender it. The Wi-Fi is called Sapphire. Let me just turn it on real
Yeah,
quick.
actually do
On the computer?
Yeah.
It's just a wireless network, so you connect to wireless,
Yeah. So
and then it should come up with Sapphire.
I don't see it now.
Okay, try to refresh.
How much time have we got, Ben?
Like 2 minutes.
Okay.
Or we can just plug this into your iPhone, right?
Okay, yeah.
Does that work? Is that?
Like that.
Yeah.
Do you have
No, I have iTunes.
Okay, so yeah, let's do your CD and iTunes. And then this is just on your phone.
Yeah.
Cool, that's fine, because mine's more complicated because of instruments, so let's just do your list.
I mean, this is listening. The realest part that I want to do. It's even greater.
I think we also don't have, yeah, I'm sure we have more use of computer time, so it's fine.
Yeah. Listen.
Here, this is nice.
Let's do it.
It's on there.
I was saying, I was like, I have such good questions.
Yeah.
Those are great questions. I also like
Now, back in the day when bikes were popular in the 70s, everyone rode with a whistle.
Yeah, actually.
You know.
There was an
Jimi
episode.
Hendrix has like a picture on his bike with like a whistle in his neck, and I think that's what they use. Yeah.
It was cool, you know. It was cool to see
Yeah.
groups and groups of people riding bikes, black people.
We did that for the NSA bike ride.
Huh?
The bike ride against the NSA.
We were running. Oh,
10 seconds.
all right. We were reminiscing. That song brought back some memories for me about bike riding in the 70s and having whistles and blowing them and all like that. And before the break, we talked about Lila's birthday is today.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, Lila.
Wow, this actually, how'd you do that
There's
without
a balloon
seeing
and
you?
everything.
I was like, what? Thank you so much.
I was doing it during the musical break.
Thank
I'm
you.
Blowing the
all
whistle.
stealth- Huh?
Blowing the whistle.
That's right. We were so into blowing the whistle, his napkins. You know.
For our listeners, I just got handed 6 beautiful cupcakes for my birthday, 2 yellow, 2 pink, and 2 blue. That we're all going to have to eat for the rest of the show.
Very good, very good.
Thank you.
You know, as we were talking about riding bikes, of course, and for me, when I think about that, people riding for a cause, I think about the bike-a-thons for medical cures and to raise money for medical cures and so forth. I think, and I could be out of the loop here, but you're the first group bike-activists that I've heard of who ride to eradicate racism, patriarchy, and so forth and so on. Now, how does that look?
Well, we're not the first.
Yeah, we're definitely
The first
not
I've heard of.
Okay.
I don't get out much.
No, there's some awesome bike groups that ride for awesome things, like Red, Black, Green, which is out in Oakland, Atlanta, Brooklyn now. Also the Ovarian Psychos, which are a women of color bike group, predominantly Latina outside of LA. They ride around a lot of these issues as well, and many others that we don't even know of right now. But for me, one thing that I think there's so we've been it's bike riding and there's the bike culture, and we for our first ride partnered it up with a dance party, if that's what you want to call it, but just alternate spaces for us to interact with our allies, or for us to just be on ourselves with biking and adding it onto another event. And so I think that offers a lot of opportunities to engage with the local community, engaging at large with other bike communities. I hope that D.Railerz does some work with the Red, Black, Green Bike Collective across the U.S., the RBG stuff. But yeah, so for instance, I was really happy to ride with the D.Railerz during our first ride, where the D.Railerz partnered up with Casa Ruby. And so we had a great party and raised money and kind of, rediverting community funds into spaces that need it and trying to support each other. And that's just one way, fiscally, but also I think there's opportunities to partner up, support each other in the arts in terms of presence, space, time. I think there's a lot of opportunities, and even beyond, issues around surrounding women of color, or just people of color. I think I'm also really excited. And I look forward to see in the discussion, how D.Railerz wants to engage with the broader community. I think there's a lot of opportunities for partnership. But yeah, for me, it's very much just getting involved locally with your community.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, the D.Railerz is biking is a medium through which we can do.
I want to talk a little bit about that first event, but Fallon, could you piggyback on what Laila was saying? If you have anything to add about how biking and eradicating racism, patriarchy, and so forth is framed through a group like the D.Railerz.
I mean, I think the cool thing about it is that everyone brings, people always say it, but everybody brings something different, because the way that I look at it is like, there's a lot of, like what we were saying, the party and the add-on and just like supporting each other in the way we can, but like that particular event that we had, just having performers that were all women, and it's funny because we're like, oh, there's all women, but if there's all men, no one would say anything. They'd be like, oh, it's just a show. So just how ingrained it is in people to just naturally exclude women from spaces that are definitely need support from women and need, I guess, kind of intercommunal gathering spaces. And for me, that's kind of what's important too. It's not just, obviously I think about those things every day because you can't not, right? Like you said, you go to work and you feel like you'd be looking be looked at some kind of way for biking, but it's bigger than that, right? Like knowing you go into interviews and knowing that like you're going to be seen as less qualified. So I always think about those things, but to just divert that kind of like painful and annoying issue into like putting it in work that I feel like is important. Mm-hmm. And for me, that's something that makes me feel like I'm doing the right work for myself, and also just like making it broader than just about bikes. Because bikes are definitely cool, but it's kind of like a means to engaging all different kind of folks.
Slammer. Okay. So, how did that first event look? It must have been exciting for one thing. And where did you guys meet, and where did you ride, and how many people showed up? And
The ride, we met up in Malcolm X Park,
mm-hmm.
and we did a big loop. We tried to hit all of the quadrants in the city, so yeah, we did one big loop and ended up back in Northwest for the after event, which was DJs and fundraising for Casa Ruby, and having our allies come out and support us. So yeah, which is an interesting thing.
Why do you laugh?
So I think the event and the ride itself was also, it was a reminder of just how fuzzy the boundaries are. They're not that fuzzy, but they are to other people, because we had folks showing up like, well, we had white men, we had men, and it was interesting, right? Because we had posters and we had word of mouth. It was really clear, and we even made some announcements, and even at the party. And so for me, that event was really awesome, and a lot of people showed up, and a lot of women of color and trans folks of color showed up, but also interesting for me in terms of how we engage with other communities in the dominant white male society as well, which still feels like we're just trying to wedge in. And all the more reason for me to be re-cemented is what we're doing, and yeah, so.
I mean, it was also fun to I'm laughing because we definitely had our allies, which, I mean, when I think of someone who's like an ally, I don't really like that word, but just like people who can support me. So like in my life, that's, thinking about like men of color and the work that they need to do in terms of like addressing sexism and stuff like that. And so like having a lot of my male friends being like, no, you're going to cook the food and you're going to put it together. Because usually at events, even like activists, artivists, all those other words, it always comes down to the same people doing the work, mostly women of color. And at the end, being the ones that clean up. And I'm kind of like tired of being used as that in that one way. Because it is problematic and it is rooted in a lot of really messed up dynamics. So having like some of our male friends like in aprons cooking food and like seeing how much it actually takes. Because I think a lot of times for me it's like feeling underappreciated in a lot of areas of my life, like work and just, sometimes even where you can live, where you have so much to give and then people don't recognize how sometimes they erase women of color from history, from spaces. And so just finally seeing like, we had some folks at the door who were just like, I don't want to give any money. It's like, well, what? Why wouldn't you want to, like people that we know to have the funds too. Like, and so just seeing how this is a shift and how it's not like where people, you listen to, like Tim Wise, who everyone like this is a Messiah, or all these other people, and think that it's over, but it's like reshifting the way that people think, period. And it takes a really long time, and it's difficult.
You seem impatient at time. Are you?
I think it's taking way too long.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm impatient.
Okay.
It's just taking
Sorry.
too long.
Yeah. Well, I am impatient.
Crooked handlebars, riding through lights and cars like you could fly away. See your wheels go round again the way they sound. You wearing green and you go and ride.